Okay, we are live. Hello, Tiffany Rothman. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me. It's an
Yeah.
honor.
Well, it's my honor to have you. This is exciting. There are so many aspects of your story that I want to explore. You are an actor in critically acclaimed films and TV. You're also an MBA and a PhD in psychology. You've been a
Psych
school
D. The Psych
psychologist,
D. Yeah.
a
It's
Psych
Psych
D,
D.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've been a school psychologist working with kids. You have kids of your own. There's so many aspects of your story. You're just a fascinating person. So I'm really excited to have you on. Um, so I've had a lot of different people from different aspects of life. I've actually had some therapists on to talk about various things, narcissism, faith crises, porn addiction, things of that nature. Your psychology, school psychology, you did that for 25 years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in 25 years, was there were you like elementary school, high school? Where did you?
Both. Both.
Oh, did you notice when did you stop doing school psychology?
A few years ago, I retired from the Department of Education in New York City around 2018.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
and we moved out here on 2020 during the
Oh,
pandemic.
oh, wow. And out here is where are you
Los
located now?
Angeles. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So yeah, across the country. Um,
Yeah.
uh, in the time frame that you're working with kids, were there common themes of issues you were seeing with kids, particularly in this most recent generation?
Yes. I, yes, I do. I found that the children would be better adjust when they have both devoted parents, whether intact or not.
Hmm. Oh, and when you say intact, meaning both parents are involved, whether they are together or whether they're separated.
Right. Even if they separate and they're good friends and they there every day for the children,
Hmm.
then that would be fine.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when you here's a question I've had often because you hear so much. I'll tell you, I'm on the board of a local receiving home for children, particularly their shelter care for kids that would otherwise be in foster care. And what I found so fascinating when I first started working with the receiving home was that I asked them, uh, how many of these kids are coming from single parent homes? And he said, probably about 99%. And then I said, how many of them are the mother versus the father that's missing? And it was almost over, I mean, almost 100% were fatherless homes. Did you notice a difference as a school psychologist? I'm sure there was a difference between having uh, both parents involved versus one. But was there a significant difference if they were missing the mother versus if they're missing the father?
It's depend on how devoted the parents is, but yeah, that's somewhat of a different, but it's all depend. I mean, it's can be really sad. Sometimes I
Mm,
see the missing mother and with the father, and somehow the father was able to manage the child, get the kid to do what he wants, but he had to be very devoted and like working overtime, and the mother too. And
mm,
as long as they don't like fight against each other, because sometimes when you have parents that are separate and they don't
yeah,
like each other and they would badmouth about the other with the children.
yeah, that's rough. That's tough. I have a lot of friends who are divorced, and I know a lot of situations where the um, the co-parenting relationship has broken down, and it's always tough. The stories you hear. But you did that for well, was it time to retire, or was there some reason in particular that you left
It
school
was
psychology?
time. You can retire at a certain age, and I would just grab that and leave.
Ah,
because it's not really the nature of the job, but the ridiculous politics of
mm,
the organization. Because a lot of
mm,
times they have mental illness, and you really cannot help them much.
mm,
They say this is a
mhm,
school. It wasn't worth it actually, But
mm,
I had to be there that long. I mean, if it was up to me, I probably would have left a long time ago,
mm,
go for
mhm,
another organization.
mm. So the politics that you're dealing with within the organization, was it a situation of just the bureaucracy, or was it the difficulty in just not being able to have the resources to help the kids, or both?
Bureaucracy.
Mm,
Sometimes the resort, but bureaucracy.
mhm. And can you give me a sense of some of the stuff that you would run into?
Like for example, if you have a child who I seen and I evaluate and I send that your child will be hurting him or herself,
Mm,
and I will have to set up a situation that help the kid because I don't
mm,
want to see the kid hurt. And I probably would have to turn around and tell you, and this is your first time seeking special ed, I probably would have to tell you that you have a lawyer.
mm,
Could you please go outside and get psychiatric evaluations?
mm, mhm,
And usually you ask for two, and then two of them to rule out XYZ. I said to rule out this and that, and usually both of them come back saying what I'm afraid of the most.
mm. Man, that's tough. And then when they come back and they say something that when you say that what you're afraid of the most, you mean the particular diagnosis you're
Yeah,
worried about?
yeah,
Mm.
yep.
And then when you have a kid who's diagnosed with a specific mental illness,
Hmm.
um, what is the process then? I mean,
Well, I
and
have to apply for it, and then of course administrators most of the time will fight me with it because they want to be less restrictive environment. Cost, I mean, less money for them because I'm
mm,
under certain line, and then the school administrator would want you to get rid of the child as soon as possible. They couldn't care less what you do with it, just get rid of it. And it's
get rid of the kid, you mean?
yeah, the kid, and the process is very long. You have to apply for it,
Mhm.
and you have to see you send it down to the central board and let them make the decision.
Mm. And then if they make a decision to remove the kid from the school, do they go to, like, a special education school, or where do they go?
They go for another school, more like restricted of special education or residential. It depends on the situation of the
Interesting.
diagnosis.
Yeah, that's another thing that I've noticed in education. If you've been in it for 25 years, if you were in it for 25 years up until 2020, you
18,
prob
18.
18, then you started around the time when I was coming out of high school, and
Yeah.
the thing that's so funny is that I remember in in my time in elementary school, they had on campus special classes for kids with mental illness or Down syndrome or various degrees of issues. But by the time I was in high school, it seemed like they were kind of getting away from that and
Hmm.
just kind of putting them in the mix with the rest of the kids. Uh, do you think, just as you in your experience, that that was a better way to handle it or a worse way to handle it, or did you?
It's depend on the school where they at
Mm,
and the staff
mhm,
because right now I'm working with a nonprofit organization that dealing with the adult disabled
mm,
development disability, Down syndrome, autistic, and it's near home.
uh-huh. Cool, and what exactly does the nonprofit do?
Well, they have create a day program. Some people live there too, but they create a day program, and this is something that I really like because I can do hand-on, like teaching them to do activity, dancing, art, and all kind of things.
Oh, nice, so you volunteer over there?
No, no, it's a part-time jobs.
Oh, cool, okay, and so you're working with this nonprofit and
Hmm.
teaching adults with disabilities how to do some of these artistic things.
Yeah, like a day programs. That way they can enjoy themselves and have a lot of fun and feel like living is worthwhile.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mentioned I also saw, when we were setting this up, I saw that you're also a professional dancer. When did you start dancing?
Well, not until late. I mean, I think I started as a teen and somewhat a little bit, somewhat in college, a little bit, and then I started again at the when I'm in my early 30. I studied with the Isadora Duncan International Institute.
Uh-huh.
It's movement for film and theater also, and we would travel to Europe and dance. And I
Cool.
would study belly dance, and sometimes I would perform with the group belly dance class around New York. But that's before the pandemic.
Sure. So you're a professional belly dancer then?
Well, I'm trained professionally.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That's interesting. And what was that when you went to the institute for this type of stuff? Is that what you were hoping to get into, or was that just something you were the best at? What
No, I just like it a lot.
do you like the belly dancing?
Yeah, I love belly dancing. I love the costume. I love the movement. It's very feminine and it's created by women for giving birth, and I just like it. Get
It's for women in giving birth.
Yeah,
What?
that's how it was created.
Yeah, tell me more about that. What is so I don't I got to tell you, I've seen belly dancers at like Mediterranean restaurants and at different places and stuff, but I don't know a single thing about belly dancing. What is it? Where did it come from? Where did it originate from?
I think it's from somewhere in Africa, and it's a group of women. They get together. They would like they dance, and they would like give the movement of giving birth to make it a lot easier for people to give birth in those days. Well,
Oh,
this is a long time ago when they probably before epidural,
yeah,
way before epidural.
right. So belly dancing started as a way to kind of make pregnancy easy, or the birthing process easier.
I think so because they say this is the giving the movement of giving birth. So
Wow.
it must be really easier because imagine in those days there's no numbness, no epidural, and you have C-section and you have surgery without any
Yeah,
medication.
it's funny. My mom. So my mom. I have a sister that's 21 years younger than me. Same
Oh,
parents,
mm,
everything,
cool.
and
That's
so
great.
yeah, it's an experience. It's funny because uh yeah, it's a really different experience being an adult with a sister that's a child. She's now almost 20, and in just watching her, it was pretty cool for my parents too, because my parents, um my dad, I've shared this on the podcast before. My dad is over 25 years sober from drugs and alcohol. So
Mm,
he had a really rough we me and my brother and my sister kind of had my sister. I have a brother and a sister, and then a very much younger sister. Me and my brother and my sister had a very different experience. So
mm.
when Sammy came along, my youngest sister, it was almost like a second chance for my dad. And so it's been cool to watch her have the parents that I like, the dad that I kind of wished I'd always had.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Because my dad is a completely different person now than he was when I was growing up. So it's
Mhm.
fun to watch that, and it's a lot of fun. Interesting. It's interesting to watch how she grows up, and I see some things that she definitely has a benefit that I didn't have, and I see some
Mhm.
things that I benefited from kind of having some of that rough go that she didn't have, and generationally it's different too.
But you know what? You're very fortunate because your father cared enough to take care of his situations.
Yeah, and that I gotta say, I was actually talking with my mom about this recently, and I brought up, he, to his credit, even when he was even when he was off the rails a little bit, no pun intended, he um he always tried his best to provide, even when he wasn't around. So, but
That's
towards the
nice. That's very responsible and that's very loving. You know,
yeah,
when you at your best and you still try very hard to provide.
yeah, and the thing was is the last time when he finally went to rehab, and cleaned himself up, he never blamed anyone for it other than himself. and he just said, "This is not a you issue." I remember my mom recently told me that she and he both went to a therapist and talked
Mhm,
about it, and when she went in, the therapist told her the first thing he said was he recognized that she had nothing to do with it, it was just him, and that it was something that he needed to work through on his own, and
mhm.
he did, and he did his best to make amends, and like I said, it wasn't easy at the beginning because he just you could appreciate this as a psychologist, when you
Mhm.
start getting into those addictions, or you have a mental illness or you have trauma, at a young age, you're kind of frozen emotionally at
Yeah.
that age, you know?
Actually, when I did Blue Blood, it's about gambling addiction. I was the mother of somebody who had a gambling addiction, and he stole money from us. And I was only a co-star, but it was pretty intense scene. So I ended up writing an article on it about gambling addictions.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I can
that's
send it to you if you like.
I would love to read it. I Gambling addiction is really interesting. I actually just had a guy on, Joshua Shea, who's he was a pornography addiction expert,
Mm,
and he talked about the difference between, I think he called the ones physical addictions versus process addictions. I can't remember what he called the one, but process addictions like gambling, porn, food. He was talking about the differences in that, and it's really fascinating. Like when you have a process addiction like that, it's not just the art, it's not like when you're doing cocaine where you're just looking to get high. It's the entire process of
mhm.
going to there, doing the bet, winning. It's not just about the winning, it's the whole process that you get into. So it's really interesting. But anyway, it's not about me. This is about you.
It is.
So
It is. It is very fascinating.
yeah, yeah. So tell me, now you said you were on Blue Bloods, and that's what I wanted to ask you. What had you always been involved in acting?
No, no.
Okay. When did
I
you start?
wanted to, but I couldn't because when I just came over here, my language skill was not, I wasn't comfortable with it. It was very limited.
Mhm.
And, I'm learning disabled, so I have processing difficulties, and it's
No.
very, very difficult for me to accomplish anything. I have to work really harder and longer and put in a lot of time compared to other people. But nobody know that because I try to keep it quiet, about it.
Sure.
So
What
after
real quick, what learning disability do you have?
I can't process well.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Okay.
slow.
When you say process, you mean like reading process or you mean like
Reading language. So I have to do things over and over again in order to absorb it.
oh, so for acting, there's a lot of memorization involved, right?
Yes, but for acting, it's okay because you have to memorize. You have to do it over and over again.
I see. So when you memorize, it actually helps you. It's better for you.
Yes, yes.
Got it.
Because I think one time we almost got into this play, but it got canceled. But I think the director told me, "What did you do? Memorize it the first day or something?" But because
Yeah,
I was memorizing it, because it's better for me that way. So, but anyway, it turned out to be for the best. Because you know how sometimes when you have one disability, it could be a gift on the others.
yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned coming over. Where did you come from?
I'm Vietnamese. I left Vietnam, almost 48 years ago, on April 28, 1975,
Wow.
without my late father. He died over there afterward.
And
And
what was it that prompted you to come over? Did it have anything to do with the war or
yeah, yeah, I was a child. My family, well, my father was a law professor, but he got involved in politics, and he was with the very, very last government that surrendered to the northern Vietnam. He was the minister of defense then. And so he went to concentration camp, and when he got out, he couldn't come over here, and he died in 88.
wow. Your dad was the Ministry of Defense of the last government in Southern Vietnam?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, he
I
was the
learned
minister of
so much about you.
education when I was little,
This
too.
this was not on your bio.
Well,
So
I don't want to discuss about anyone else's. I mean, he was a minister of education when I was little, too.
yeah,
But,
okay, wow.
I don't like that. I wasn't impressed with politics. And
Yeah. But how old were you when you came over then? You must have been a young child,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yep. I
So
was almost 12.
oh, wow, okay, so So tell me, I mean, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I can't imagine taking her away from everything that she knows.
Without you, the best part is without you. You know what I mean?
Did you come with your mother, or who'd you
Yes,
come?
he was pregnant at the time, and some
Okay.
relatives. I mean, his relative and my relative, and some of my mother's side, but his relative, they all come over here. It's,
Wow. So you come over, and where do you end up when you get here? You end up in New York?
we
Or
would
no?
in no, wasn't New York. We would in refugee camp in Arkansas, and then we got sponsored by one of my mother's sister was going to school in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and she found a church to sponsor us. We didn't go with my father's side because that time one of my cousin who taught at Stanford University, he was dying of cancer.
Mm.
So that
Oh,
was
wow.
very, very sad. So we went there, and then after a couple of years, my mother wanted to move to Brookline, Massachusetts, because her sister and her brother-in-law bought a house there. So we kind of bought a family house together, upstairs, downstairs, whatever.
Yeah.
Stayed there until after college, and I moved to New York for grad school. But the truth is, that's like an excuse for me to be near the theater, the performing arts. But
Yeah.
and I have to be practical, so I studied business.
Yeah.
Always study some kind of business. Actually, that was a mistake, but
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because I told people you were coming on, and one of the questions that came through was you have an MBA and you're in the arts. Do you see, do you think that your MBA helped you on the business aspect so far
oh
of,
yes, yeah.
okay, because what is it that you see? I mean, if someone wanted to get into acting, what are some of the business aspects of the entertainment industry that you think people need to watch out for?
Well, it's a lot of things. So, like one of my wonderful teachers said that he's not going to lie to us. You need money to be in this business. That means you should have a job that make money. And when you present yourself, like when you need headshot, when you need acting class, when you need video clip, sample clip, whatever it is, you have to be able to produce them.
Mm,
And you
mhm.
have to take a lot of classes. I took classes for over 15 years off and on. And
Um,
I have coaches too.
wow. So then it sounds to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you come over here and you always kind of had a flair for the arts.
Mm-hmm.
Fair?
Mm-hmm.
And then uh, but you took some classes, but it was kind of later on in life when you got into college that you started pursuing your passion for that.
Yeah, I mean, when my daughter was 6 years old, when I was working as a school psychologist,
Mhm.
and I have my daughter, and I was dancing and performing, and I say, I think I'm comfortable with the language enough
Oh.
to study acting.
Oh, okay. Wow, so this is, quite a bit later than because you hear
Yeah.
about people starting out as child actors and
No, no, not me. I was middle age.
yeah, okay.
I am
So
hopefully still in middle age.
well, yeah, I'll tell you, I'm 42 years old, and I used to be afraid of middle age, the term.
You're a
But
baby.
now I know. I feel like a baby, but that's funny because I'm an attorney by trade. And so I looked at the actuary table's lifespan for a recent case, and I saw someone my age, the lifespan is 84. So I am officially middle age. So like I can't deny it anymore. And so but don't worry, my daughters remind me all the time. They tell me about the gray in my beard. So I know. But tell me what you think is the difference. Do you think it helped you to start later?
Well, everybody has a different story.
Yeah,
Everybody has, But for me, yes, because I really couldn't. I need to learn the language skill. I wanted to have a family. I want to accomplish most of my education. Because when I was studying acting, I was also later on, I was going for my doctorate too.
yeah.
I did
Wow.
my thesis based on one of the plays I was in.
Which play?
Flowers, a Thorny Romance. It's about
Mm.
domestic violence.
Oh, really? Well, that's what's so interesting, like, from what what you've talked to me about so far, it seems like you have a lot of roles that have to do with some sort of trauma. I mean, you're in the blue bloods on you're seen as in gambling addiction. You did a
Oh,
play
my
based.
son is. I'm not. I'm the victim of somebody who's a gambling addiction.
Right,
And
right.
addictions.
You're a victim of that. Then you're in that play that's on domestic violence, and then your recent film that you were involved in, The Accidental Getaway Driver, has to do with a true story about someone who was kidnapped. Um, is there do you find yourself kind of always being in these roles where you're dealing with some sort of trauma?
No, actually, no. It
Okay,
depends.
yeah.
I
Do
think
you?
the play. I was in a play over the summer. That was somewhat the trauma. But I play a spirit, somebody who already passed over, but no one know that.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
yes, and the trauma was they were harassed by the Ku Klux Klan. And the funny thing is, we they won best writing. The play
Huh.
won best writing, and the writer claimed that I was surprised. She's half Filipino and half Mexican. She said I was surprised. I mean, I don't understand why that the Ku Klux Klan doesn't like the Vietnamese. But then again, who do they like?
Right. True. That's true. That's a good point. I want to go back then. Tell me about, did on that vein, uh, coming over here after the Vietnam War, how were you received?
God, not very well.
Yeah.
But
You're,
that's because naiveness, naivete. You know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
they don't know any better. But I work on it, and I'm still friends with some people that I just met when I came over here.
Yeah. No, that's great. But I think the reason I bring it up is because we still have situations where refugees are coming over right now from
Yeah,
various
yeah.
parts of the world. Um, Tell me a little bit more about the experience of being a refugee. Tell me what you, if you're comfortable talking about it,
Well,
what that was like.
it's difficult because you don't know the language, and you always feels like you're an outcast of everything. But then again, there are people who tend to treat us like that in a
Uh,
job situation. So,
yeah. You mean in a job situation, they treat you like an outcast because you don't know the language or because you're a refugee or?
because I'm an immigrant,
Oh, I see.
it does happen, and or they don't like the fact that you have credential.
Mhm.
It's kind of ridiculous because I met a lady. She was, I think, a clerical data entry, and then she got a master degree in social work, and she from
Mm,
another country. And then
yeah,
she said, I don't understand these American people. They get jealous of you when you get your graduate degree when they could have easily gone for it. And
yeah.
another lady told me that she from the Caribbean. She's lovely. She's a counselor. She
Mm,
said I was told that you're so lucky. You're an immigrant and you got this job. And she said you couldn't have gotten it too if you went to school. They would
right.
have hired you before they hire me, which is
Right.
true.
That is true. And that's interesting. You know, it's interesting when you put it that way because the narrative on the side of what I'd call a person who's anti-immigrant is that, well, they're coming over here and they're taking jobs away from us.
Right. Yes.
But the thing is like what you're saying is kind of true. It's not like you didn't have to work for that job. You came over here not knowing a language, no money, coming from a war-torn country, and then next thing you know, you're working and getting a degree. And this person could have easily had much lived here, knew the language, no, had resources. There's all sorts of resources from FAFSA, Pell Grants, all sorts of different things that can be used if you're low income, and could have gotten
Or you
that.
get scholarship. I got scholarship on the last one too. You know.
Yeah, right, and could get scholarships, but somehow you coming over here, you're the reason they don't have the job, not their lack of ingenuity, and I find that really interesting considering that they're also the crowd that tends to be the pull yourself up by your bootstraps type of crowd too, but they don't pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Someone else came over and took it. Not all, but I'm just saying generally, I find that kind of fascinating.
But you
So
know what? The thing is, like, I think that as I get older, I have more respect for the one who openly discriminate against me than the clueless one. You know what I mean? Because the
yeah,
people who are clueless, they can be really dangerous. They could be your professor. They could be your mentor. And
sure.
they complain that, complain about people who are discriminating this and that. And they are so clueless with their own discrimination.
That is so true. I had somebody on um not too long ago in a podcast who was a Donald Trump supporter, and we had a long conversation about racism. And I don't believe he was racist in any way, the guy who came on, but we had a conversation about people who it's really fascinating when people could say the most vile racist things and don't think that they're being racist. You know what
But
I
you know
mean?
what? He's no more racist than anyone else's. So
Sure.
I work for the city, and the city's supposed to be liberal, and guess what? They're far from it. They're
Mm,
very, very, very backward.
mm. You're saying the city of New York.
Hmm. Well, I'm
Yeah,
sure they have it in Los Angeles too.
yeah. Um, so you going back to your work in theater and things like that. You said you went to New York for grad school, and you said secretly you kind of did that because they make you closer to the theater. Do you? And I noticed also when I talked to other actors that the actors, there are some people who love film, love TV, love theater. Do you have a preference?
No, I love all,
Mm,
but
mhm,
theater is difficult. I did a play last summer in Santa Ana, and it's only like the weekend play. And it's really difficult because you have to put in a lot of time to rehearse for it,
mhm,
and
mhm,
then you perform it, and you did a great job, yes, but and then it's gone.
mm. Yeah, tell me, I took acting classes in college,
Mm.
but I've never really performed. Well, I take that back. I'm going to, this is a first for the Edlow podcast. I'm going to disclose something about myself. I played the big bad wolf in a the Three Little Pigs in a children's theater class,
Oh
and I
wow!
gotta tell
Any of
you,
your children saw it? Any of the kids?
my oldest son was, I think, 4, 3.
Mm.
Well, that would mean my oldest daughter would have been born. I think she was just a baby. I think he remembers it. Um, but yeah, it was. I killed it. I'm not gonna lie. I killed it. I was a great big bad wolf. I gotta say, But but as far as the process of the reason I bring that up is that I don't know anything about the process of preparing to be in a movie. So, like for the accidental getaway driver,
Oh,
walk me through the process of getting
okay.
ready.
This is really interesting. This is very interesting.
Uh-huh.
Blue Blood came out that Friday night, and I was in San Francisco with my cousin. We celebrating my debut in Blue Blood, and she and Michelle was really kind. She have all kind of champagne, cake, pastry,
Mhm.
because the next day I have to shoot for Dawn of Skate. Dawn of
Mhm.
Skate is coming out in the premiere at the a bar next month, but we'll talk about later. So the next day I have another movie to shoot. And the next day after I shoot that movie, I went home to the hotel. I opened up my email on my cell phone, and they
Mhm.
said like they want you to send this in as soon as possible. And it was like around 8 or 9 o'clock. I called New York, and
Mhm.
I asked my coach. See, my coach, she was married to Paul Mann, who used to train people like Sidney Poitier.
Mm, mhm,
So
mhm.
Lenore hasn't gone to sleep yet, and she said she could never say no to me. And we rehearsed. I said, I just got it. I need to get it in, and I just don't have time to study it. So
Mm,
we spent 2 hours and we recorded. It was
mm.
hard because I have to do it in two languages and things like that.
Oh, you had to do it in English and in Vietnamese?
Right? They want somebody who's bilingual, my age, immigrant accent, bilingual, and real actors, and so that's what I did.
Mm,
And I sent it in right away that night. When I finish it. I just sent it into my agent. And then 6 months later, In between, they said they like me a lot, but leave the day, and they're going to call you for a callback. So I got a callback, and they said the reason the callback was so long because they need to request funding for the film,
Mm.
and they got funding. So I have to do the audition over again with a casting director. He's lovely, just like you and I now, and
Uh-huh.
in two languages. It was not easy because the auditions was more strenuous than the shooting itself.
Okay, man. And is that typical for, because I mean, the movies that go to the Sundance Film Festival, for those who may not know, these movies are not your Marvel movies that are going out on, going out on big budget things. These are like really artsy indie
Hmm.
films.
Hmm.
Um, so that's interesting that the process was so strenuous to get into the movie. When you're filming the movie, I got to imagine, you're filming a scene on a certain day, so you just get your lines ready for that scene,
Yep.
but it's
Yeah.
not shot in sequence, right?
Well, I only have a small, like, two scenes,
Mm, mhm,
and what happened was it shooting overnight. I was at the garage,
mhm,
and somebody arrived and said that, "Do you know so and so? Are you his sister?" And it
mhm,
cut it. They cut that, and well, actually, they cut a lot. And we end up in my kitchen in my home. I was cleaning up his face,
mm.
and I really appreciate that because the hairdresser and the makeup artist made me look really good. Nothing like this, I actually look good. Because this is just, I don't have a facial. This is me.
Well, hey, you look great tonight too, so this is good.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
So anyway, I was cleaning his face, and then there's a scene at the dining room. I was talking this time in Vietnamese, and then cut. He has to. They cut it. He has to talk to somebody else again. So it's like a too short scene.
Mm, mhm. But so how many days of shooting were those 2 scenes?
It's overnight, so it's like a day over something
Oh,
less than a day overnight. Yeah.
and,
Same
when
same thing with Blue Blood.
okay. So now tell me, in Blue Blood, you're dealing with a gambling addiction. You have a couple of scenes in that as well.
Right, but I don't speak English.
Mm,
So I was fighting with my husband, and even though the leading man and lady was in front of me, I didn't speak English to them. I was fighting with the guy and I became friend with him. The actor Vian
uh-huh.
Ho, and he played it, my husband. And the funny thing is, I said I'm going to do Dawn of Skate, and I need a picture of me with an Asian man. So could you mind standing the picture of us, and you're going to be playing Deadbeat Dad on that movie? And he said
Nice.
okay. He agreed to it. He's such a good sport.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Now, do you find that in your projects, when you make friends, do you hang on to them, and does that lead to more work later on down the road?
Oh, I don't know, but I hang on to them because I like them.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
are most of the roles you play specific to being bilingual and Vietnamese, or there are some that you've gotten where you just
now some of them is just in plain English. Like, actually, there's another film that coming out. Dawn of Skate is in Vietnamese and
Mhm,
English subtitle, and there's another one. It's called Dancing in a Forbidden World. It's a short one, 20 minutes, because she want to raise her funding to turn into a series or something. I
mhm.
speak English. I play Madame Wu,
Mm,
and that was nice. And another one got Anxious. She doesn't want me to talk about that or post any picture yet, but I have many scenes, but one scene with lines, which is like a fighting scene with my neighbor,
mm,
and
mhm,
the other scene is just like without line in her fantasy.
mm. So, how long have you been acting?
Actually, full time is only a couple of years, several years. When I try on the 2019 full time, but I've been studying for a long time, and I was
Mm,
in a theater in New York, Love Creek Productions.
mhm,
So that's also part time for people who work during the daytime, and I should do little thing here and there. But I should become an actress full time when I retired from Department of Education.
Yeah, so the your story as far as theater goes and as far as film goes, where does it start? I mean, when did you actually first start acting?
I take classes and then I went on for audition for theater because it's harder for me to do film
Yeah.
because I
So
have
you
my
started you
jobs.
you started in the theater,
I
right?
started in the theater.
Uh-huh. And what year was that you started?
Oh, not sure. Is it like around oh 08, oh 09?
Okay.
First time I was in the theater,
Wow.
and
Oh,
sparingly, and then yeah, then theater is like here and there.
yeah. And then over time, as you get to about, after 10 years of part-time theater, you decided I'm going to go ahead and
No,
start.
I do some film. I think like we create one film once that we created when we have time off, and I did some commercial. I forgot with who, but when
Mhm.
I have time off, and I did do some film, and one of the thing, let's see, one of the film was it until like a couple years later, and I completely forget the name. I play an immigrant,
Uh-huh.
don't speak much English, in a grocery store. This
Ah,
shoot in Philadelphia over the spring break.
uh-huh.
So that
Wow.
was fun. So I did do some little film here and there, and I did some student film that a lot of them didn't come out.
Ah, uh-huh.
And
But is
but
that but that is
2019, that's really, I did a lot of student film 2019, and guess what? The best one was out here.
huh.
I flew out here in the fall of 2019 for University of Southern California. I did a short film, 5 minutes only. I played a grandmother lead,
Mhm.
and the following year was the pandemic, but it went to three different films festival.
Oh, wow. Nice. And is there a project that you have done that you would say was kind of your, because I mean you're doing a lot now. I mean, you've been in a Sundance film, a critically acclaimed movie that's gone to Sundance. You were on Blue Blood. You've done, you've got this other one coming out, the Dawn of Sky. Is that what's called? Dawn
Skate,
of
Dawn of Skate, like roller skate. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's come out in May, and then a couple more are going to come out, and then actually one of the film we did that never came out, and that was a big disappointment because we worked so hard on it. I auditioned 3 times for it. It's called My Vietnam, and somehow it just didn't work.
Hmm. Does that happen often where you go in and you film a movie and they just leave it on the cutting floor or what?
On students film, yes, but not this. This is a feature film, and
Yeah.
a lot of us was in it, and hopefully someday they fix it. But I'm not holding my breath. I'm disappointed.
Uh-huh.
I'm not holding my breath. I'm
Wow.
looking for other projects, now, because a couple weeks ago I shot another series, an indie series about Asian American. It probably would come out on YouTube, and this weekend I'm shooting something for USC.
Oh, you are? Another
Yeah,
student film?
now the student film because they're very professional. The last time is it when was it? Is it like last year or the year before? I shoot a film for them. Must be the year before. Must be the year before, and it came out beautifully. I went, I saw it, and people even recognize me when I stand in the hallway.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So, um, as far as if there was someone who was, let's say, someone in their middle age time, or even, we'd say late 20s, early 30s, and they're thinking, my time has passed to do this stuff.
No,
What would be your recommendation on how someone would get started?
I said your time is never past. Look at another lady. She was in Accidental Getaway Driver with me, the great actress Gabby Chan. She said she studied for 15 years. She's like around my age, or like 1 year older the most.
Mhm.
And she was a computer engineer, and she started to want to become an actress, and she spent 15 years studying for it, and now she's doing it.
Mhm. Wow.
Because you should have your own job, your own job first, and
Mhm.
unless you the easiest way people said it would a trust fund.
Right. There's not a lot of those going around these days. So, But where does someone when you say take classes, is there a specific place that you took classes or
Yes,
yeah, where would you
I was
recommend?
in New York. But you can take classes here too.
Uh-huh.
There's
And
a place to take classes here. There's many places to take classes here, but I was in New York. I took class at I can't believe I forgot the name of it. The actors connections took a lot of classes there, and I
okay.
took classes workshop here and there when people advertised for it, and I took class at HB Studio from the beginning, and I have private coaching and performing arts studio. That I took a week here.
Mm,
In LA, I would say take class at the performing arts studio.
wow. Um, as someone who enjoys uh or acting, do you have a specific genre of films that you like to watch?
Oh, I have to watch everything. I can't discriminate because I need to learn.
What
But
would you say what would you say is your favorite movie?
oh, really want to know?
Yeah.
uh, American one is Don't Bother to Knock. Marilyn Monroe, when she was 24 years old, playing
Okay.
a mentally ill babysitter. That film is so underrated, and she was so remarkable. Don't
Uh,
Bother to Knock.
don't
And
bother.
another one, foreign film, like Story of Adele Edge, Adele Hugo's daughter. I mean,
Hmm.
Victor Hugo's daughter.
Oh,
Isabel Adjani's in it. She suffered from schizophrenic
oh. It,
erotomania.
foreign film, was it in a different language?
French, but the subtitle. And
Yeah.
I also like old film, like I like film noir. I love black and white film.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
when I was studying, when I was a school psychologist, young age, I just started for a couple of years and only dancing. I would take dance class, and on a weekend I would watch film that based on mental illness, like
Hmm. Mhm.
sometimes Catherine Deneuve would be in some of those.
Well, I'm sorry, say that what was that last part?
Catherine Deneuve, the French actress, Belle du Jour or something. I would
Uh-huh.
like that kind of movie, but I would make sure that I would see at least two movies a week, and mostly on mental illness or some emotional conflicts.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah.
That's like
So,
major movie, but we don't talk about TV shows. That's another story. But I have to
yeah,
watch a lot of those stuff,
yeah,
and I was
understood.
working and go to school full time at the same time.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's funny. Have you, have you ever I actually had a director and animator on, Stephen Chiodo. I
Hmm.
had him on about a month or 2 ago. He directed the movie Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a kind of a horror film, from the '80s.
No, I'm afraid of horror films.
Oh, you're afraid? Well, this is one
I'm scared of
this
horror
is not
films.
your this is not your typical this is not your typical horror film. So what you're saying, Tiffany Rothman, is you are not a fan of Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
I
No,
would be
but
scared.
yeah, no, it's more of a funny horror movie.
Oh,
It's
okay,
kind of a cheesy movie that just makes you laugh. But anyway,
okay.
so this is the pitch here that Tiffany Rothman gets cast in Killer Clowns from Outer Space Part 2. We're looking for that. Also, Pastor 2. That's another one that you got to see if you're in
You
this.
want to hear something funny too? When
Yeah.
my friend Derek Nguyen direct The Housemaid in New York, it was in the winter, and I was sitting diagonally behind him, and
Uh-huh.
it's a scary movie, horror movie. I was
Uh-huh.
cursing him out under my breath the whole time, and I told him, "Oh, that's good. I mean, you like it." I said I was so scared.
Yeah, it takes a specific type of people really like that. I have some friends who are really hardcore into some horror
Oh
films.
boy.
That one was and those ones I'm into the ones that are just really silly and anyway, that's a different topic, but um so I want to talk with you a little bit about, you know, your experience. You're an Asian American, you came over from Vietnam. Uh do you feel like at times that I mean, I know you've been doing this full time just for a few years, but do you feel as an Asian American that you are typecast at times?
I would have to say yes, but that can be favorable also. Could be
Mhm,
because they
mhm,
would cast me as an Asian mom, tiger mom.
mhm.
that's how it is to typecast. That's how it is with with this business.
Mhm.
I would
Well,
rather
maybe
job
that's the way
have
maybe
it.
maybe that's the way you get in, you get your
Mhm.
start, but is there a type of movie specifically that you would like to see yourself in at some point?
I like to be in a series. I like to be in a comedy, like playing like a real nosy neighbor. Some, remember that show Bewitched? Maybe you were too young. Bewitched.
Oh, I remember Bewitched. Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, and then Gladys, this nosy neighbor, she would like peek up on the window, and if she see wild things, she starts screaming, or she
Yeah,
would come in and say, "Oh, I want a cup of sugar," or something like that. And then she would look peek around the house.
yeah, yeah.
She was the second one. She was really no, the first one too. She was really good actress. She was in On the Town with
Mhm,
Sinatra, and then I think she died.
mm.
She passed,
Yeah.
and then they had to have somebody else's.
So
But I
if you if you could pick any role that like any role for you, like your dream casting,
mhm.
what would it be?
I would say that some comedy role, nosy neighbor, or a servant playing a servant. You know how servant they also really nosy, like a semi spy or something in the gossip.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
that would be funny in a comedy.
yeah. Wow, but, so you think it sounds like what you think is, yeah, you're being typecast, particularly in these ones where you need someone who's bilingual or someone who's Vietnamese, an Asian, these Asian specific roles, which could be your benefit. But, at some point, do you hope that you branch out into other roles?
That would be nice, but I will accept role as they come. Like now, I'm doing a talk show podcast in YouTube.
Yeah.
Number sign filter 90211 every Sunday. I love
Yeah.
it.
And what is you mentioned, yeah, your talk show. So tell me, what is your talk show about? Is there various topics or one in
Mhm.
particular?
Various topics, but it's about one thing: it's growth, the journey of growth.
Hmm. What inspired you to do that?
Well, I auditioned for it and surprisingly got in.
Oh, so this wasn't a project you started.
No, no, no. George Anton started it. He's a producer.
Oh, okay. And then you're the one who does the interviewing on
Yeah.
this.
Yes, and my co-host, my co-host Chris Sloan, he's really great. He's very intelligent, very funny. So he really balanced the show out. He balanced it out well.
Yeah, and it's specifically about growth. You're talking about just growth in life or
Anything,
yeah,
growth in life, like like how do you develop this project, and what you do is just like about on anything,
sure, sure.
and it's
Well, that's
unfiltered, just like this.
yeah, and, when you talk about growth, I mean, it's a very interesting life that you've led coming over from a war-torn Vietnam with a father who was the Ministry of the Secretary of Education over at
Minister of Education and Minister of Defense.
yeah, and you come over here at the age of 12 not knowing the language, and you grow into a master's in business and a psych D in psychology, and then parlay that into an acting career. Tell me about just kind of the growth that you've experienced in your own life.
Well, with me, it's different. I don't have a choice.
Ah, that I'll tell you what, I gotta tell you, Miss Rothman, or do I call you Dr. Rothman? What do
Whatever
you
you want. Call me Tiffany.
okay, well, I'll tell you, Tiffany, that is a huge my experience has been the have to life versus the want to life. Uh, that is a huge indicator of success, you know?
Well, if it's up to me, I might not want to be anything.
Oh, yeah?
Who knows? If I have such a comfortable life, why would I want to be anything?
Yeah. No, but that is something I'll tell you, I talk with my son, he's 16, and he's at that area where he's starting to figure out what he wants to do. And my life, the way my life looked at 16 versus the way his life looks at 16 is much different. I grew up, like I said, my dad was just on the edge of cleaning up, getting sober. Not a
Mm,
lot of funds, not a lot of, there was neither one of my parents graduated from college, they're hardworking people, but money was always tight,
mhm.
they, and, supportive and loving. My mother is the most supportive person on the face of the planet, but like I said, it was just I knew as far as finances and things of that nature, as far as getting an education and doing things, I was on my own and there was no safety net, you know? And my son, on the other hand, like his dad is a lawyer, his dad is, he hasn't had those same experience. Not that he hasn't had hardship, he certainly has, but it's but but it's a different life. And I just know that there were definitely times in my, in my education and in my life where I absolutely wanted to quit, and I couldn't because if I quit, there was nowhere to go, you know? And
Oh,
I
that's
think
how I feel when I was a school psychologist at the Department of Education, nowhere to go. And plus, I got a job. I managed to get a job at close to my daughter's school
mhm, mhm.
up until eighth grade. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. But that's what's so interesting, right? Is that like you can't reach that extra gear, that you need to be successful. Uh, it's hard to get that when you don't have to. You know what I mean? Like you said, like if I didn't have to do it, I might not do anything, right? And I feel the same way. Like I don't know if I would have gone worked full time and gone to law school full time if I didn't have to do it. You know what I mean?
Same
Uh,
here.
yeah, yeah. And so tell me, did you? I mean, the education part, was that instilled in you by parents? Was that something you did on your own?
The educational pocket, that's what I brought up with everybody who, live around me, within my family, they all values higher education.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but to me, the way I look at it, if you don't have it, you couldn't get a job.
Mm,
So what you
mm,
gonna do?
yeah,
You lost everything already.
yeah. Right, right. So, well, tell me, going back to the acting,
Mhm.
um, I've heard a little bit from other actors about gender bias in the entertainment industry, and I'm guessing you've probably experienced a little bit of that.
Oh yes, you see that they always prefer the men to do X, Y, Z more. In the film, you would see like more men. They would have larger role, more lines, X, Y, Z. It
Mm,
does happen.
mhm. And in some of these, films that you're doing where it's based on kind of for lack of a better term, the
But
Asian cultural films, like, uh, do you think that that's necessary because of just Asian culture in general, or do you think it's
no,
more
no,
by
no, but you know what? Now come to think of it, go back to my mind. I wrote a play that I never produced or showed to anyone many years ago, and
mhm,
the people, the main character in there, and the majority of them are men too.
mm,
Because maybe this is true and it might be sexist, but the men are the one that create more problems. They're more colorful in society than women.
that's actually you're not far off there, Tiffany. That is true. It's actually interesting, and I would tell you also the thing that's interesting about that, and I've noticed this in my own life, is that because men tend to be the ones that create the problems the most, when it's not the men who are creating the problems, people have a really hard time believing that. It's interesting. It's almost like a
All the time to accept the woman. They don't accept the women do it,
Ri
creating the
right,
problems.
right, and I've noticed that in my own life, there have been times where, I've had experiences where because, because there are men involved, they think that the men are the problems when it turns out that's not true, and people have a really hard time believing that, you know? But I can understand why, because if you're looking at it, in fact, I talked a little bit of this with, I had a therapist on, who deals specifically with narcissism.
Oh,
And
yes.
he says, he goes, "Yes, most narcissists are men, overwhelmingly," right? Which makes it incredibly hard when you have a narcissistic woman because they're so good at projection. It makes the man, sometimes it can make the man look like the narcissist when it's not. But how do you tell, you know? And so it's really interesting.
Well,
How,
my supervisor, my first supervisor, school psychology, she said she her doctor is not in, is in administrator supervising school psychologist. She said that women are just as bad as men. I say yes, but you don't you don't see it. You don't see
yeah,
it that much. And
yeah,
and the thing is like when you have the problem like the one in the movie of Adele Edge, erotomania. Usually they say it's the woman suffer from it, and she can create a lot of problem. But when a man suffer from it, it's not erotomania. They get violent. They become criminal.
yeah.
Because when you hear things, oh, women suffer for it, and then when you do that kind of case study or research, you would hear the man say, "How come nobody suffer from erotomania for me? I want to understand that."
Yeah, well, and I think that's also, talking, and this is just generally, right? It's not, I'm not talking about anyone's specific situation necessarily, generally, but I've noticed that too. Men, when they are like that, uh, they are so overt. It's easy to see. You know what I mean? Because they're so overt, they're aggressive. It's what you would
Yeah.
expect.
Yes, like think back of my play. I didn't write it on purpose. I just met these people through most of them through my husband, and I
Mhm.
I think I told him that before we were married. I said the only time I ever want to leave you was the people that you introduced me to.
Yeah, yeah,
And I wrote a play about them, and it's mostly overwhelmingly men are the majority of it. I mean, I try to make my character in it, but I loosely model my look after one of my girlfriend from high school because she's very pretty,
uh-huh.
and it was small, and then the crazy woman, her role was small, and then other woman that I couldn't really give them bigger role. Now come to think of it, I still have to play, but the men forget it. They were like, whoo, overwhelmingly, they would the thing they say, the thing they do, and their characteristic is like
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? Is that it's easy sometimes to spot the men in these types of situations because they're so overt.
Mhm.
You hear the stories and it makes sense, but sometimes, when it's surprising to hear that on the other end. But anyhow, that might be my own trauma speaking. But
Well,
but
no,
uh
you know
but
what? A lot of people, my former optometrist, he said that too because when he and his wife adopt twin boys, and
mm,
he said, "Oh, my wife would do anything for them." And I said something like, "That's great. So when they grow up, they wouldn't be like any other men." And he laughed. But guess what? He's more serious than I am. He was like this. Absolutely. So right.
uh,
Absolutely.
well, I'll tell you what, there's a reason why I believe this. There's a reason why men are so protective of their daughters, and it's because they know how most men are.
They project their image.
They project what they are like, and what, like me, I played basketball in high school, I wrestled, I did all these things. I was around a lot of those jocks and all those guys, and the way the way that people talked about women and things, I was like, "Oh, man." When my first daughter was born, I was like, "Man, I am in so much trouble." It just was like, "I don't know how I'm gonna handle this." Because the boys I can handle, and it's interesting too when you have boys and girls. It's so funny because I can handle the boys stuff. I can handle the, like, bodily functions and the smells and the breaking things and all of that. I can handle all of that.
But see,
It
they're lucky they have you because now I remember when I was a school psychologist, I have to give more prep talk and longer meeting with the boys because I
Yeah.
said, please be careful because, if something happened, then what? You end up in jail. I would say, please be careful. Just don't go with any women, especially when they're on intoxicate. Please don't do anything. It's just like I have to
Yeah.
say all kind of things for men, much more than the girls.
Oh, and that's tough, that's a tough go because, yeah, like, I have this conversation with my son all the time, and it's like, the only thing I can tell him is there's a few things that I know I've told him in the past, and one of them is just, you don't ever wanna put yourself in a position for anyone to suggest anything that you did.
Yeah.
You never want to be in a spot where anyone could even think that you had done something aggressive or untoward to a female, you
You
know?
see, you can speak to him that way. These men that don't really have voice. And I said, look, I have to give example online. I said, look at the TV show so and so, and
Mhm.
look what happened to these two boys who already got scholarship to college, went out on a party, and this girl, she got drunk. She grabbed both of them. She initiated into
Mhm.
the bathroom, and of course, she made it with both of them. And when she's sober, she called it rape. They
Mm.
lost it. They went to jail. They lost their scholarship. And when they investigated, it's something like say like if that was rape, how come her clothes were not on the floor? Their clothes were.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I don't know what story that is, but yeah, it's scary, it's scary because and also not only that, and I've had this conversation with my son being I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Mormon church, and so we don't
Oh, great.
we tend to not drink or do drugs or any of that, and
I
so
see.
religiously my son understands that that's kind of a no-no, but I've tried to talk about practical reasons. And as one of them, I was like, "Man, I couldn't tell you how many times when I was in high school, because like I said, I played on the basketball team, and I've
Hmm.
been around a lot of wrestlers and stuff, and
Hmm.
I never really partook in any of those things, but they partied and did that stuff. And it's I was like, I couldn't tell you how many times somebody got drunk and did something that they
Oh,
wish they hadn't done, and it just takes one bad night to change your whole life, and
yes. So the thing is like with the female, like you say, with the female when it's when they're not intoxicated, they do bad thing, but it's not as bad as what the boys could have done.
oh, and yeah, and I don't even think that that is gender specific. I think that anybody who, when they do that stuff, and this is not me pitching for, you know, for people to be sober all the time, because I know some people, they like to drink, and that,
Hmm.
and more power to them if they can control it.
Yeah,
But like,
nothing wrong with drinking as long as you can control it.
right, right. But I just I know, and this is specific for me, like the addiction gene runs through my family. So it's just like one of those things where I was like, I don't even want to know where I would
I
end up.
think addiction run in a lot of families, a lot
It
more than
does.
you think.
It does. And it's unfortunate because I've seen and even in my practice as an attorney, there's a lot of drinking that goes on, and a lot of
Mhm.
there's a lot of mistakes that probably wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for alcohol. And
Mhm. Yeah.
and so
What kind of law you practice? My husband used to be a lawyer.
Oh, I do, trial work for plaintiffs in personal injury actions and wrongful death cases,
That's
and
great. And my husband, he did a lot of trial, but
oh,
he's
he
more like family law attorney, foster
oh,
care.
oh, okay. Now, tell me, your husband, how long have you guys been married?
Over 33 years.
Wow.
Young
And
marriage for me.
yeah,
Well,
and
you too.
yeah, and he sounds like he's very supportive of your acting career.
Mhm. Oh, he loves it. I think his dream was he wished he could become a film director or something, but he used to work in film before law school.
Oh, okay. Cool. And so, um, you know, and your kids, how old are your kids?
She's 23.
Oh, 23, okay. And, I'm assuming she's supportive of mom and her acting career.
Yes, 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 yeah.
Uh, and, so tell me, what's next for you? I mean, you've got a talk show now, you've been in Accidental Getaway Driver, you've been on Blue Bloods, you've done Dawn of Skates. So what's next?
I'm going to do a student film this weekend after my job on Saturday night, and then after the talk show, I will, shoot for a film.
And we can find the talk show on YouTube, so
Yes,
and you said it's dollar
filter,
sign
not
90211.
dollar sign, number sign, but it's filter 90211. George Anton picture Anton Anton.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. So, there's a few questions that I'll wrap up with you here shortly, but there's a few questions I ask everybody, and I wanna ask them of you. Um, you've had a lot of experience in your life, and, wanna ask, What would you say is your greatest success?
Well, I have to say my family,
Mm,
the marriage.
mhm. Yeah, that's impressive. Um, and what would you say is your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, it will probably loosely based on academic.
Mm.
What I
Wait a
what I
minute. You feel like you're a failure in your academics?
Yes, because it takes me a long time to accomplish anything academic. I didn't. It's just like I should have. Well, this is I didn't know, but I should have get the extra help like people are doing in school nowadays. And in those days, they just look at my record. They say you never cut school, you never fight with anyone, and they did not give you the extra help.
Mm.
And one of the principal I know said that you just forgot to take the garbage can and throw it up throw in the cafeteria and torn the school apart. You just missed that. If you have done that, you would have gotten help.
Well, you know what I think is interesting about that? I found that really interesting, and I'll tell you why. I think, not knowing you before an hour and 10 minutes ago, that I would say from the outsider's perspective, that is one of the most impressing things about you. You have a learning disability and have a difficulty with processing, yet you have a master's in business, a PhD in psychology or a Psych D in psychology. You've been a school psychologist for 25 years. You went all the way in your education. That's what's so you say that's your failure because it's your biggest struggle, but man, talk about taking your biggest failure and making it a strength and a success. I mean, that's so impressive that
I don't
you
have a choice. I don't have a choice. Like I said, I
yeah.
don't have a choice.
But the thing is you to me are a shining example. There are so many people out there who they would have your disability and they would look at that and they'd use it as an excuse. And they'd say, "Well, I can't do that
They have a
because
better. They
I'm
probably have a better life. They might have a better life. Who
may
knows? You
maybe,
know,
but I don't think so because listen, think about I view life as a series of accomplishments. And at the I view life sometimes as kind of a resume, and your resume is stacked. And the thing is that there's so many people out there who would say, "Well, I'm not where I wanna be because of them or because of this. You have to understand my childhood was terrible. My mom didn't love me enough. I have a learning disability. I have a mental health issue, and so that's why I've done nothing and accomplished nothing, and I have no control over everything." Here
no,
you are, and this is what I see you as, Tiffany. You you came over to a country that you didn't know with no with a language barrier at the age of 12. It's not like you came over at the age of 5. You came over in middle school, and then you went from there not knowing anybody, not knowing how to speak to anybody, and you went all the way through your education, and now you're in the entertainment industry, and you have been in a series of successful movies and theater and all of these things. You are the American dream.
yeah. Well, if there's a will, there's a way.
Yes, and that's what I love. This is what I love about this podcast. This is what I love about the human experience. I have met so many people on this podcast. Some I like more than others, but everyone has a story, and your story is one that is so impressive because there are so many things that if you had not accomplished any of the things that you accomplished, Tiffany, nobody would say a word about it. If you had quit at any point along the way, everyone would have understood. She's an immigrant. She doesn't know the language. She's got a learning disability. Of course she couldn't finish her MBA. Of course she couldn't go to college. Of course she couldn't do these things. You just understood that that meant you had to work a little bit harder.
Yeah.
And you accomplished things that many people have never accomplished. So I would tell you, like, I'm so glad I got to meet you
Thank
because
you.
this is a story that I would share if I was ever speaking publicly. Your story would be the story I would share of not letting anything stop you, and I really appreciate that.
But,
But
but also, don't forget, Einstein has a learning disability too. He had one, and then he was kicked out of many schools,
yeah,
and Con Edison was kicked out of his school.
yeah,
Also, it's his mother that saved him, because after his mother died, he went back to her house, go through her drawer, and found the letter that they told him to give it to the mother, and he couldn't read, and it said something the opposite of what his mother told him. Because
mm,
he remembered his mother started crying, said that your son is very brilliant. We cannot teach him here. Please try to teach him yourself, do this and do that. And the mother more or less like took over. But that's not what the letter say. The letter said that he's unable to learn. We
mm,
cannot teach someone as low function as he is. And he's Con Edison.
yeah. Wow, man,
So he has a learning disabilities too.
yeah,
And a major one. And also one my coach told me that she has a friend who son when he was born, she see that how he absorbed things very slowly. And so what she did, she's an actress, she took him to California, homeschool him so she can do work at the same time. And make long story short, when he turned 18, he speak 3 languages and he got full scholarship to Vassar College in
wow,
upstate New York.
man. And those are the stories, it's funny because then I remember this guy on Facebook who, and people get mad at me sometimes because I'm the guy who tells you, that just what you said, there's a will, there's a way. If you really want it, you'll find it. And they're like, "Oh, Josh, you don't understand my story." And I just go, "You know what? I don't need to hear your story. Everyone's got one of those stories. Everyone can find an excuse why they can't do what they want to do. These I'll tell you, not to get into my own personal stuff or anything
Yeah,
like that,
yeah,
but like I've had a horrendous few years personally. I don't share it publicly, but I've had a horrendous few years, but I've also had some of the most successful years at work, in my personal life, with my kids that
mhm.
I've ever had in that exact same time frame. And if I had just sat there and said, "Well, all these terrible things, I can't get the things done that I need to get done," I would have never had those successes.
Right, because see, with me, I had some health issues when my father died. I fainted. I thought I was going to die. It was really terrible. So what happened was I was in Boston, in Brookline, Massachusetts then. And I went back to New York because I was still in grad school. And I said to myself, I need to get a full-time job that can provide me health insurance that will not ask any questions. Because I have tried to apply for a job in the private industry. And I asked them, you have allergy shot? Forget it,
Mm,
you never get hired. So I started to work with the city,
mm,
and it turned out to be a good thing. So I just fell into it. At first, I worked for ACS, I mean Child Welfare Protective Services,
mhm.
and then after a while, I say, oh, I think I want to become a school psychologist, and that's city job also. So
Mm.
I carry the pension over, and it turned
Yeah,
out a gift. So like my health situation back then, really bad, really really severe. The allergy was so unbelievable. And it's better now because I do alternatives. So what I did, I saved money. I found some kind of alternative way, like vitamin and vitamin C drip, vitamin wellness, and those things really help you become stronger. And your allergy is not so bad because I don't want to take medication. I don't like medication.
no, I mean, that stuff, some of that stuff was worse than,
Oh
man.
yes, like because doing the season, doing final exam in college, where
Mhm.
I was in Amherst, Massachusetts, the allergy was really high, and they don't have medication that don't put you to sleep. And
Mm,
imagine studying for final every year like this, have a sleep like this, and try
yeah,
to pass all the final.
right.
So,
Oh, yeah. No, I couldn't imagine.
right. So partly it's academic failure. It's because of that. Partly because of it. And
Yeah.
other thing there's things I regret. Like when I was a child, I didn't like my piano teacher too much. Or I didn't really study it when I really like it, and I studied again as an older person. And
Mm,
the person who taught me, she was amazed that I was able to do what I did. I mean, not saying, not bragging or anything, but she said like this is incredible. But I couldn't. I was too busy because I was a school psychologist studying
yeah.
psychoanalysis. So So I was not as good as I should be. Like I should have tried to study harder as a young child. And another thing is, when I was in school, I in Vietnam, I studied French. I mean, I can speak it a little bit, but I really do everything I could not to learn it because I didn't like the fact that the teacher hit me.
Well,
This time I could have just go for it, and I could be fluent in the language and read the literature. But
yeah,
well,
it's funny you bring that up because when I went on a mission for my church when I was 19
mhm.
and most of my friends could go, they ended up going to like, they went to, I don't know, Brazil or, Bolivia, all these different countries that they could go to and speak different languages. And I went to Indiana, and because I marked on the there's a little place you could mark how effective you think you'd be with another language. And I think effective at all. And so they left me stateside. But anyhow, so one last question. I appreciate your time in talking with me about your story. At some point in the future, the distant future, you're going to pass away and there's going to be a funeral. And when there's a funeral, someone's going to give your eulogy. And what would be one thing you would want someone you hope someone would say in your eulogy?
I would say I stop at nothing and I make no apology.
Yeah.
But like saying I'm Tiffany Rothman and I make no apology.
No, that's great. That's something that I think is really great. And what I've appreciated about you is I there are some of these podcasts that I get that sometimes I walk away and I go, I just don't feel like the person was being authentic. But I do feel like today I got the authentic Tiffany Rothman, and I can't wait to see what you do next. I can't wait until I get to see I looked everywhere. I couldn't find Accidental Getaway Driver. Once I can find it streaming somewhere or purchase a Blu-ray, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna watch it. I'll let you know.
It's a
Uh,
lovely film. It's very sensational.
yeah, I can't wait. And then you have Dawn of Skates coming out in May, right?
Yeah, yeah, but that's just like at a small place because she wanted to raise money to go to a film festival.
Oh, okay, okay. And then they can catch you on your talk show, which we've already talked about. And so,
Yes,
well, Tiffany, thank you for letting me come on and talk with you. Thanks for coming on my podcast. I very much
thank
appreciate it.
you.
Let's do this again. Next time you have a big premiere, let me know. We'll get you back on here and we'll let everybody know about it. Okay?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure. It was nice meeting your kids too. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
your
we did that
four
before. Yeah.
children, your four children know how lucky they are to have a wonderful guy like you for a father.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, oh, and I got to tell everybody to subscribe. If you've made it this far, subscribe to the podcast, and we'll and thanks, Tiffany, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yes, thank you so much. You'll be well.